Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. This is Real Talk with Coach Sherry, and this is a public service announcement for our upcoming elections. It is time to exercise our right to vote. This video is going to have the schedule of early voting in all 51 states, but I highly recommend that you go to vote.org. That's vote.org to get the specifics for your county and your zip code to make sure that you have the exact date and place of where you can do early voting. This video is going to have the schedule, but I'm not going to have the exact date, so I need you to pull out your calendar so that you can mark and see what the dates actually are, but still go to vote.org to double check. Share this video with those in your circle, especially those that do not live in your state, so that they can also find out when early voting begins in their state. If you are not yet subscribed, I invite you to join this team. Hit the subscribe button and the bell for notification. Please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below and let me know, did you early vote already? My dad in his state, he was able to early vote. He is 82 years old, and so far he's taken people to register to vote, people to vote. You can even call, and if you early vote, you have the flexibility to do those things for your community. Be sure to look who's running in your local, state, and federal government, and make sure that their values, their goals, their platforms are aligned with who you are, what's most important for your family, our community, and our country. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. Please get your pen and paper out, get your calendar out, mark these dates that I'm giving you. I'm actually going to give you the days before election of when you can early vote and the days that early voting ends. But you have to go to your calendar. All right, here we go. In the state of Alabama, early voting ends 5 days before Election Day. It ends 5 days before Election Day. Remember, go to vote.org for more information and specific information about your county. In the state of Alaska, early voting begins 15 days before election and ends the day before election. And that is in the state of Alaska. It begins 15 days before and ends 1 day before election. For Arizona, early voting begins 27 days before election and ends the Friday before. But some counties, it will allow you to early vote through November 2nd. So that's the day before the actual election. Please go to vote.org to see when your county ends. In Arkansas, it begins 15 days before election and ends the Monday before election. So in Arkansas, 15 days before, and it ends on November 2nd. And that is in Arkansas. In California, early voting begins 29 days before election. However, it will vary from county to county, and early voting will end the day before election, and that too will vary county by county. So please be sure to go to vote.org for more information. In the state of Colorado, all voting will be done by mail. All voting will be done by mail in the state of Colorado. So make sure you have your information. Go to vote.org for any kind of information or ballots that you may need to receive before election. In Connecticut, there is no early voting or no excused absentee voting in the state of Connecticut. So you will have to go to the polls on Tuesday, November 3rd. Make sure you know where you are to go. Go to vote.org for more information. In the state of Delaware, there is no early voting or no excuse absentee voting So you will have to vote on the day of election on November 3rd, which is Tuesday. Go to vote.org to make sure you know exactly where to go for voting. In the District of Columbia, it will vary, and this is DC, but no more than 10 days before the election will there be early voting. And beginning and end of early voting will vary, and it is set by the Board of Elections. You will need to go to vote.org for more information. In the state of Florida, early voting begins at least 10 days before elections, and it varies by county, and it ends 3 days before election, and that will also vary by county. So please go to vote.org to make sure you know when you can vote in your county. Also, you can go to usvotefoundation.org to find useful information and election official directory, and that's for any state. For the state of Georgia, early voting begins the fourth Monday before election and ends the Friday before election. That's the fourth Monday before election it begins and ends the Friday before election. In the state of Hawaii, they've transitioned this year, 2020, to all mail-in voting. So please contact vote.org for more information, or usvotefoundation.org. And I will leave both of those links in the description box below. In Idaho, early voting begins on or before the third Monday before election. Not all counties will have early voting and will end the Friday before election, and not all counties will have that. So please go to vote.org to make sure your county has early voting or not. In the state of Illinois, early voting begins 40 days before election and ends the day before. You may notice some states have a long period for early voting, some have a very short window for early voting, and some don't have early voting at all. So please go to vote.org or usvotefoundation.org for more information. In Indiana, early voting begins 28 days before election and ends the day before elections. In some states, you can vote on Saturdays. So also check vote.org if your county has early voting to see if the polls will be open on the weekends. In Iowa, early voting begins 29 days before election and ends the day before election, and that's in Iowa. 29 days before and ends the day before. In Kansas, early voting begins 20 days before election, and it will vary by county, and it will end up to the day before election, and that also will vary by county. So please go to vote.org or to votefoundation.org for more information on your county. In Kentucky, early voting begins 21 days before election and ends the Saturday before election. So remember, I said some states you can vote on the weekend. Make sure you understand what it is for your county. Go to vote.org for more information. In Louisiana, early voting begins 14 days before election and ends 7 days before election. So if you understand, this means that in Louisiana, you have a 7-day window to vote early. In Maine, early voting begins 30 days before election and ends the Thursday before election. It begins 30 days before and ends the Thursday before election. Okay. In Maryland, early voting begins the second Monday before election and ends the Thursday before election. So it begins the second Monday before and ends the Thursday before. In Massachusetts, early voting begins 11 days before election and ends the second business day before elections. So sometimes they're wording this, I think, to trick us or to trip us up a little bit, but please have your calendars out and mark exactly when that will be. I believe the second business day before is the Friday before. In Michigan, early voting begins 45 days before the election and ends the day before. However, it will vary county by county, so please go to vote.org or usvotefoundation.org for more information and specifics on your county and zip code. In Minnesota, early voting begins 46 days before election and ends the day before election. So they have a very long time, unlike Louisiana, who only has 7 days of early voting. Minnesota starts 46 days before. In Mississippi does not offer early voting or no excuse absentee voting. So please, if you are in Mississippi, make sure you know where your voting polls are, because you will have to vote on Tuesday, November 3rd at the polls on Election Day. There is no early voting in Mississippi. In Missouri, there is no early voting. It does not offer it, or no excuse absentee voting. So once again, check vote.org or usvotefoundation.org for more information on where you need to go according to your county and zip code. In Montana, early voting is 30 days before election and it ends noon on the day before the election. So it starts 30 days before and it ends at 12 p.m. on the day before election. In Nebraska, early voting begins 30 days before election and ends 1 day before election. So it's 30 days before and it ends 1 day before election. Remember, election is Tuesday, November 3rd. You can go to vote.org or usvotefoundation.org for more information. In Nevada, early voting begins 17 days before election and ends 4 days before election. So 17 days before and it ends 4 days before election. And I would really recommend you go to vote.org to see if they are counting the weekends as the days before. In New Hampshire does not offer early voting or no excuse absentee voting. So please go to vote.org or usvotefoundation.org for more information on where you go on election day to vote. The state of New Jersey, early voting begins 45 days before and ends at 3 p.m. on the day before election day. So in New Jersey, it's 45 days before early voting starts and it ends 3 p.m. on the day before, so on November 2nd, it ends. New Mexico begins 28 days before the election and ends 3 days before election. Now, if you don't get to early vote, never mind. That's okay. Just go on the day of election to cast your vote. And that is on Tuesday, November 3rd. In New York, early voting begins 10 days before election and ends 2 days before election. And just because you don't make early voting does not mean you cannot still vote. You can still go to your polls. Just go to vote.org or usvotefoundation.org to find out where you would go to cast your vote on November 3rd. In North Carolina, early voting begins 19 days before election and ends 3 days before election. North Carolina, 19 days before, and it ends 3 days before election. I hope you have your calendars out. I don't know why they didn't put the exact dates, but they didn't. In North Dakota, early voting begins at least 15 days before election, and it varies county by county. It will end the day before election. So you have to contact vote.org or usvotefoundation.org to get the specifics for your county and your zip code. In Ohio, early voting begins 20 days before election and ends at 2 p.m. on the day before election. So in Ohio, you can early vote 28 days before and up to 2 p.m. on the day before election. In Oklahoma, early voting begins 5 days before election and ends at 2 p.m. 3 days before election. This blew me away because it's really saying you only have 2 days to do early voting in Oklahoma. I guess 2 days is better than none, but you need to be very aware of that. In Oregon, there is no in-person, all mail-in ballots. So in Oregon, make sure you have your ballot to mail in. Go to vote.org or usvotefoundation.org for more information. Please do not wait the last minute. In Pennsylvania, it will vary by county to county, but there is no early in person. But some counties may offer mail-ins up to 50 days before Election Day. Please contact vote.org or usvotefoundation.org for more information and specifics according to your county and zip code, because it will vary. Rhode Island, you have 20 days before election to do early voting, up until the day before election to do early voting. That's 20 days before and up to the day before to do early voting. South Carolina does not offer early voting or in-person voting. So you will have to go to the polls on the day of election on Tuesday, November 3rd. Please contact vote.org or usvotefoundation.org for more information according to your county and zip code. South Dakota, you have 45 days prior to election to early vote, and it will end the day before Election Day. 45 days before, up until the day before to do early voting. In Tennessee, you have early voting starts 20 days before election and ends 5 days before election. So please, if you are in Tennessee, understand that you do not have until the day before. You have until 5 days before election to do your early voting. Otherwise, you will have to go to the polls on November 3rd. In Texas, you have 22 days before election up until 4 days before election to cast your early vote. So it is not the day before, it's 4 days before you have until to cast your early vote. In Utah, you have 14 days before until 4 days before to cast your early vote. So 14 days before Election Day up until 4 days before Election Day to go in and cast your early vote. For more information, go to vote.org or usvotefoundation.org. In Vermont, you have 45 days before election to cast your early vote up until the day before Election Day to cast your early vote, and that is in Vermont. In Virginia, you have 45 days before Election Day to vote early, up until 3 days before voting, up until 3 days before Election Day to cast your early vote. So you have 45 days before, up until 3 days before Election Day to vote early. In the state of Washington, you have 18 days before Election Day through Election Day. They do not distinguish between early voting and voting on Election Day. So you have from 18 days before through November 3rd to cast your vote. In the state of West Virginia, you have 13 days before Election Day up until 3 days before Election Day to cast your early vote. Remember, if you don't make it to early voting, there is no worries. Please be sure to go to the polls on Election Day on November 3rd, only if you had not already voted. In Wisconsin, you have at least 14 days before Election Day to vote early. It will vary it varies by municipality, and it ends as late as 2 days before, but again, it will vary by municipality. So go to vote.org or usvotefoundation.org to see what your municipality has set forth. In Wyoming, it's 45 days before Election Day and ends the day before Election Day. So you have 45 days before Election Day and will end the day before Election Day. Remember to mark your calendar. If you early vote, you are in great standing. If you don't, remember November 3rd is the day of Election Day. November 3rd, Tuesday. Please go out and cast your vote. Understand who's running in local government, state government, and federal government. It is all important. I'm trying to tell you, people do not emphasize enough for local government, but that is very important because typically they will be your mouthpiece. Go to vote.org for more information. Go to usvotefoundation.org and find out useful information and understand who your election officials are in your county. This information is so important, you guys. I hope you share this video out. Make sure that you know who you're voting for, when you can vote, how you can vote. All of that is important. This has been Real Talk with Coach Sherry.